That was easy. I was thinking we should have like music.
Waiting music, elevator music.
Oh, yeah. Wish I could show you what I see right now.
Hey guys, guys and gals, thanks for joining. We're gonna hold off just for a little bit before we get started. So just bear with us for a minute.
I see a few more people joining. Welcome. We're gonna get started in about 2 minutes. Just wait for everyone else who's running a little behind. I'm curious where everyone is calling in from, actually. So if you put in the chat where you're calling in from, that'd be cool. I'll put mine. I don't know, Trey, are you even able to see the chat?
Let's see. I think I can. If I move this bar, I can't move the bar.
There's so many things on your screen, probably.
Yeah.
Chat
I actually don't know if it shows.
Well,
yeah, there it is. Oh yeah.
I just found that the chat is disabled. I'm sorry. I lied. Well, now y'all can know that I'm from Philly. All right, Trey, there are a lot of people in here, so we're good to go. If you want to start, kick it off.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining today. We really appreciate it. Welcome to the Ediphi webinar, What's on the Horizon for Cloud-Based Estimating. My name's Trey. I will be your host during this webinar. My colleague Gabby is actually on the other side as well, so she will be fielding questions. So as we go through this, please, Gabby, should we just type them in the chat? Is that the idea?
Sorry, yes. If you throw them in the Q&A section, I will go through them and either we'll answer them through chat or live.
Awesome, great. So a quick background on me. I come from the construction industry. I've worked for in the general contracting world and also other construction tech solutions, PlanGrid, Autodesk. And I have a very good grasp on just general construction technology, and certainly want to field as many questions as we can while we're talking through this. So let me go ahead and jump to our next slide here. And this is our leadership team, led by Dustin DeVan. You all may know him from Building Connected and Autodesk, but he founded Building Connected and then went over to Autodesk through an acquisition. Our CTO is Mike Navarro. He actually came from Suffolk. And then we have Danielle Sandoval, our VP of Product, and actually Danny Storley, VP of Design as well. Both came from Procore. And then Zach was from Building Connected, and Sarah came from Join and Bluebeam. So a lot of industry and domain knowledge, both through general contracting and just construction in general, and construction technology. So let's kind of start digging into this idea. We at Ediphi, we focus on pre-construction. It's the most important phase of construction. And we talk about planning the work and working the plan, and we typically spend 2 to 3 years in pre-construction for a 1-year project, and that's why we want to focus on pre-construction. There's a lot of room for improvement, for efficiency gains, and adding agility there. So that is our belief. And in fact, the requirements in pre-construction have changed over time, right? So it used to be it can be pretty transactional, like, hey, will you price these drawings for me? Just a single event. And now that's not the case anymore. It's typically five to 10 versions of drawings and pricing those and going through a whole process of dialing in the cost and the design. So it's not an event. It's also very highly collaborative as a result of that. Ultimately, you're taking drawings through those different pricing exercises and trying to ensure that you're giving your client the product that they want in their building so that they can continue to increase revenue, have a positive place to work. And it also involves more stakeholders because of that, right? So the requirements overall have changed, and there's a ton of room for improvement from traditional pre-construction. And as a result, our mission is to empower the people who plan the built world, right? So we're going to focus on that. And I want to show you kind of like what we're building and, where we're at today, where we're headed, right? So these are kind of the buckets that we're looking at. We're looking at business development, pre-con through operations. I think of BD in terms of how are we selling our work to our clients at a high level. So we're looking at conceptual estimating and using projects we've done in the past to kind of drive and give us an opinion of cost for future projects and maybe apply some escalation. And then we have pre-construction, right? We go from business development to pre-construction where we're doing very detailed cost estimating. You might go from, very schematic drawings to 50% DDs, things like that. And so the drawings are going to evolve, and, as they evolve, they're going to jump into these different buckets of doing more detailed cost estimating, but also looping in operations. So GCs and GRs are an important piece of the puzzle, and how we actually tie those into the estimate is very important. And then taking that through buyout. So really, we're at Ediphi, we're looking at conceptual to detailed cost estimating all the way through bid leveling and even buyout, so through purchasing, right? So we're authoring information here, we're taking it through purchasing. That's the overall idea. So I just want to leave this slide up here just for a second so you kind of see where we're headed. We're going to be focusing on value engineering in the future as well. So how you bring your clients, other project stakeholders into the solution to help collaboratively make decisions. So that's going to be coming soon. So let's go ahead and jump into some product highlights. So we're going to focus initially on estimating, and we kind of have these bucketed in different chunks, but we'll start with estimating. So one area that is part of the estimate is the area sheet. And this is really just massing the building. So what's the square footages for your floors? And what's the facade of the building? What are my perimeters? What are my floor-to-floor heights? And this is how we really mass the building to also help drive some of the quantities in the items, like in the formulas for the estimate. So that's really where the area sheet comes in, is massing the building. I've done this in the past just on a side sheet to really double check our floor to skin ratios. And because we're doing an Ediphi, it's gonna actually tell us what that information is automatically. The other part is formulas, right? So if I was coming from doing some of these things in Excel is, it's numbers in an equation, right? So we actually have formulas inside Ediphi where there's context to what's in the formula. So is it a metric? Is it a number? Do I want to tie something to an area sheet? So like take slab on grade. That's going to be the square footage of my lowest floor. So there's ways to put this information in the formulas in context, so you actually know what's in the formula. So if I'm an estimator and I come look at this project and I'm not familiar with it, I can very quickly see like where these numbers are coming from, how that's driving my cost. So I just want to point that out with formulas. You can do a whole lot of things in Ediphi to make this dynamic. And really that's the ultimate goal, is how dynamic can we make this so that we can programmatically make some tweaks either in the area sheet, inside the formulas, and then very quickly, you know, update those costs and quantities. So line items and assemblies are they're like table stakes in estimating. We actually take that to a different level with what we call systems. And this is like project characteristics for your project. So if I'm conceptually putting an estimate together, and I know in general, my project has curtain wall, it's got H piles, it's got footings, right? Like different things that make up that project. I can very quickly bring those into the project. And the example I give with curtain wall is typically, right, with my curtain wall system, that doesn't involve my embeds, right? So if I have built a system, I can actually ensure that it also brings in my embed, so I have what I need to attach the curtain wall to the building itself. So it's ways to ultimately reduce scope gaps. So you can actually build systems that bring in multiple scopes together, and you bring it into a project. And then you can start building your estimate from there. You can start with the majority of your estimate, and then cull where you need to. The other thing that's really handy with Ediphi is like how we look at the Lego blocks, and one is through our unit mix. So the unit mix is where you're going to take, like, let's take mixed use for example, and you'll see this in the picture. It's where we have repeatable rooms that are stacking. And so I might have, 5 queen rooms, 5 king rooms, so on and so forth, that stack up the building, that are value generating rooms. I can actually add units through our unit database into the estimate through the unit mix. And it's going to show me really what's my value generation in those rooms and how efficient is my building. So you may actually get some program drawings, either conceptually or even in some more detailed drawings, that gives you the program for the building. And I've got this many of these types of units. You can program that in Ediphi. And not only does it come with, specs like how many beds, baths, so on and so forth, you can also get the quantity takeoff that comes with that. And so that then becomes repeatable from project to project. And then you can tweak those as you use them more. You can even duplicate and add those to your unit database. Rooms is something else that's really tangible in terms of like outside of units, you've got rooms that might apply to different projects. So again, take apartments, mixed use, retail, whatever, right? You may have janitor's closets, back of house, amenity spaces, things like that. They're less repetitious floor to floor, but you want to have them in your project. You can actually add rooms, and you can have the geometries for those rooms, as well as apply your finishes, just like in a finish schedule. So you're going to look at your finish schedule. What do I have? Carpet. What do you have in your walls, your floor, your ceiling, your base? Do I have carpet? Do I have wood? Do I have paint? Do I have wainscot? Do I have ACT in the ceiling? And then you can actually apply that to the rooms. And then off to the right side of that, you'll see, at least in the picture, there's a line item section. You can also add everything that goes in that room through line items. And so let's just take duplex receptacles as the example. You can put formulas in the line items and then drag that down. So you could put code compliant duplexes very quickly in every room. So again, just thinking through the Lego blocks and how we programmatically look at estimating, you can build these things, like put this information in through rooms or through the unit mix, and then that would then spill over to your detailed summary. And you would very easily, very quickly, very easily build that estimate. And then you can rinse and repeat that on future projects. The other piece of this is GCs and GRs. So historically, like, you may be doing GCs and GRs outside of your current estimating solution, because maybe it just doesn't handle them very well. We actually have a very developed GC and GR tool inside Ediphi, where you can staff your project and cover all of your costs. Even there's like a scheduling component where you can allocate your resources, your staff, to the schedule and show how much you're costing month to month. So there's a GCGR tool, and then you can actually link that to the estimate. And the other side too is you could say, well, if I just conceptually want to say, I want to say a percentage of GC of my projects is GCs and GRs. You can just add line items in the markups section of the estimate and just have that percentage drive your GCs and GRs. So there's different ways to do it, but the GC/GR tool is a great way to kind of build out that information and have it directly linked to your estimate. So let's talk unit price. Unit price catalog is what we call the UPC, and just general historical data. Like why does it matter that we're using this UPC? How does that actually, how's that different inside Ediphi? So the primary difference here is, like, yes, a lot of solutions have cost databases, but our unit price catalog not only is a database of one region, but if you work across the country, we can actually house information for different regions. And so you may work in Boston, Atlanta, Birmingham, New York, wherever, right? And like your cost is going to change across the country. And so the way we have this set up is you can have your unit price catalog, and every line item in your UPC would have its own opinion of cost depending on the region that you select. And so the idea here is you can build a project, take a life sciences project in Boston, and you're going to follow a client across the country. You can then take that exact project and apply a different regional cost to it and say, here's my rough cost for this project located in this part of the country. So it's very easy to move information estimate-wise, project-wise, from one part of the country to another with having a regional unit price catalog. Also, part of this too is typically with database estimating, it can be pretty tedious to manage that. One concept we have, and I'm not positive this is on another slide, but I'm going to go ahead and just at least speak to it, is this idea of, we call it my UPC. And so if I'm an estimator, I can actually take, if I have an estimate and I'm looking at it, I can take a line item and say, well, I like this line, but I want to add it to the UPC, and the cost actually makes, like, this is accurate cost. I can right click on the line and add to my UPC, but it doesn't go to the central UPC. But then I can use that line on any other project that I'm using going forward. If I realize that cost, like, that's a very common line for our business, I can then request to push it to the central unit price catalog. The reason I bring that up is because, like, typically managing a database, like I said, is tedious. What we're talking about doing here is crowdsourcing that data from the folks actually doing the estimating and talking to trade partners. They're going to be getting accurate information, and they're going to want to plug that into a database. Well, typically there's one person that's probably doing the database management, and it's very difficult to keep up with. Well, now you actually have folks live in the solution, like pricing these projects and then pushing that to the database. And there's permissions around that too. It's not everyone can just do it. There's admin permissions to approve it. So that's really why the UPC is so powerful inside Ediphi. And this kind of goes to some of that, some of the UPC component as well. The other thing I'll say is, like, how we surface information, how Ediphi surfaces information at the right time is important. And this is a good example. So that historical cost, anytime lines have been used across your company on different projects, since it's in a cost database, we can actually surface that information every time it's been used. So if I'm in an estimate, I can right click on any line item and I can see historical pricing for that item. So if I'm a more green estimator, or even if I'm, have more experience but not familiar with the scope I'm working on, I can right click on a line item and I can look at every time that line's been used across the company. This is important because I can see what John uses his price down the road, and then I can adjust mine accordingly, or I can ask John, like, why did you price it like this? And he could tell me, right? And then from there, we can go back to my previous slide. Like, we could say, well, if this is the cost, we should go ahead and update it in the database, right? So we can then update it. But this is a great way to surface that information in like at the right time when I'm building the estimate. So as far as how we take that information as well in those, what I'll call these cost buckets, is we have use groups and benchmarks. And the concept behind use groups is your project, and we're looking at a mixed use facility, your project as the example, again, we may have underground parking, we may have retail, core and shell, we may have apartments on top of that. Well, those are three different uses of the building, and you may call that locations, you may call it something else entirely, categories, but the use group is how like we actually build the estimate. So the first thing we're going to do, we create a project and click into the estimate, is we add the use groups. And that's going to be those cost buckets that the client really wants us to break those costs out into, right? And then the benefit of that moving forward is I now have the ability, like if my client's like, well, hey, I want to know what this job's going to cost. I can just take the apartments of that project and compare that to the apartments of other projects. And then compare those costs, right? Just the apartments, like, a hotel over a casino versus, a hotel over retail. Those are two totally different costing projects because of the type of project it is. But now you can actually break those apart and compare those. And that's the whole point of the benchmarking, right? So we want to take that historical cost and we want to benchmark that information so we can make more informed decisions for future projects, even things like applying escalation. Like what does my timeline look like? Because my trade partners can't keep the material locked in for more than 60 days or whatever the time frame is. All of those things you have those abilities inside Ediphi to really track that information. And this kind of goes to some of that too around the cost modeling. So this is actually, we'll be showing this next week at Advancing Precon. We have a new version of this, and that will be coming out later this year. But it's how do we take that information and just look at the apartments or look at the retail or the parking and compare those costs, or you can do project to project. And then you can look at, well, if I'm going to build it, in 3 years, I'm going to build this from Boston over to a different location altogether, all that kind of stuff. It's going to take that information with those metrics, and then we can predict how we actually price that for clients moving forward. And the beauty of this too is since it's your own historical cost, like you can trust it, right? It's not buying like some database elsewhere. It's like the goal is to bring in your own estimates, your own information, so then you can gradually build this information up and use it to win more work. All right, let's talk about reporting for a little bit. So one thing that we've recently added is actually a variance report, and there's two types. One is a schedule of values variance report, and there's like schedule of values, just like a summary. And then the variance report for a detailed summary, you're going to have more information broken out in those SOVs. So if you just want to see high level, that's where that SOV variance report would go. If you want to do more detailed summary, it'd be like concrete and then all your line items with that. But here's the kicker for this, right? Like if I'm building an estimate initially and I go and I present that, and then we get more drawings to price, I can iterate off that first estimate now. I don't have to start from scratch, and I can then use my variance report to very quickly identify what were my cost drivers for that project. Like what did we add? What did we take away? What did we edit? Those kinds of things. That's where this has tremendous value. And surfacing this information in a way where it's like apples to apples, even on a single project, is something that like typically you would do with Power BI or other like reporting solutions. You'd have to build it. Because we're authoring the information at Ediphi, we can then take it and put it side by side and give you meaningful analytics. So inside the estimate, like, and this is looking at a detailed summary, but like you may want to see this in a very specific way. And there's going to be a default view when you log in and look at a project, look at an estimate. That said, you can set up custom views. So if there's a view you like working in your day-to-day, but then there's also a view that like your client, they want to see, and they want to see it broken out different ways. They may want to see some notes on the side, things like that. You can go into manage views and take that same philosophy. It's like, well, here's my view for my day-to-day, and here's my view for my client. And even to the point of, I can say, I want this specific view to be the default view when anyone comes into this project, so that when you're talking to them, you're very easily on the same page versus saying, well, I'm not seeing it the same way you are. So you can change the views when you're looking at the detailed summary as well. And then this goes to some of the bid leveling. So we do some contracting components inside Ediphi. I'd mentioned that our founder, Dustin, came from Building Connected. And so this is kind of like the bid leveling piece of that, right? So like, how do I take ABC Concrete against Acme, look at those side by side, and then make a decision to award? And then overall, like, how do I see how much I've procured at this point? Like, am I 10% bought out? And that's where we get into operations, right? There could be a very awkward transition from pre-construction operations, and we're using our tool because we go through procurement to kind of bridge that gap. So that's kind of the bid leveling contracting piece of that and going through procurement. We also handle SSO, and I actually meant to mention this earlier, but like the multi-user permissions, there are permissions built into Ediphi. So if you're not an admin, you can still have permissions as owners on projects. So there's permissions built in to really kind of go along with how you work. So if you have some estimators that you only want them to see estimating, and then you've got operations folks that they want to see just the GCs and GRs, scheduling, that kind of thing, and purchasing, you can set it up that way. And then the SSO piece, like, there are certainly security requirements. We can work with most IDPs, so it's easy enough for us to work and set up SSO on that end. And then SOC 2 compliance is coming towards the end of this year as well, for where that is a requirement. And then I wanted to field any questions at this point. 25 minutes, that's not bad.
Good stuff. Are you ready for the questions, Trey?
Absolutely.
All right. First, can multiple people work on estimates simultaneously, and how does the collaboration work across Ediphi?
Yes, so multiple people can be in the solution. So I should have specified, we are a true cloud solution. I'm not showing you the product right now, but it runs in a, like a browser like Chrome or that kind of thing, right? So multiple people can be in the same estimate. And in fact, you can see who's made modifications to that line item previously. And you can, so essentially there's a refresh icon at the top of the screen as multiple people are in it. You can refresh and it shows the changes. There's an audit trail on every line, so you can see what's changed. But yes, the short answer is multiple people can be in it. And this is a true cloud, and it's because we are a true cloud solution. What was the second part of that question? I want to make sure I didn't miss.
How does collaboration work? So
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you add multiple users, you add everyone to the system or to a project. And you can log in, be in at the same time. You're not really seeing what everyone's doing, but you can both make changes simultaneously.
awesome. How does design information get ingested into Ediphi?
So I'm going to take a stab here, and I might need some more context on this. So design information can come from either 3D models, come from drawings, and getting that information in Ediphi. Typically, that would be used on the contracting side to bring in and do quantity takeoff, or you do your quantity takeoff and bring it in Ediphi. I'm not sure that answers the question, though. I'm wondering if I get some more context on that, like what specific design information.
Okay, I don't see the context yet, but if the submitter adds to it,
Yep.
then I'm gonna move down to your answer to the cloud solution. So is it truly a cloud solution, Mac and Windows, or just Windows?
It's a cloud. I mean, I'm so just the way you're seeing this slide deck in Google Chrome, it's you can use it on Windows or Mac. It's just doing it like, through your web browser. So yes, it is truly cloud and collaborative. There are no Citrix servers anywhere that we stand up environments behind.
Next one. Standardizing our estimating data is one of our biggest challenges. Is the UPC the answer to that?
That's yes, that is a big challenge. I think it's understanding what you have and where you want to take it. A unit, so our unit price catalog, we actually have a sample unit price catalog. It has about 4,000 lines in it. There is a sweet spot. You don't want to have a database that's like 20,000 lines. You want to have the detail that you need, but also the flexibility to know that you can pick the right thing and not have to sift through that many lines, right? So the UPC is potentially a solution. Now, that said, it's not a managed UPC yet. Like we're not managing it. We have very good data in it. But I do think long-term, the database management, I mentioned crowdsourcing, the fact that estimators, as they're using the tool, can then push things to be approved, to be put in the central UPC, that eliminates a whole lot of headache for one person trying to manage this thing, like, and get feedback from everyone. I think that's a better place to be in than trying to have one person do it.
What type of units are available in Unimix?
Yep. So currently we have mostly mixed use, like apartments, but the thing is units can be used, think of like value generation. You can duplicate the units and make them whatever you want them to be. And we can work with you on kind of building that out. I come in partly from the healthcare world, and I would see benefit in having units for ORs for various like sections of a hospital, for example. And also because there's just a lot of really expensive equipment in those units, right? So I could see units could apply to a variety of projects. I just spoke initially to mixed use, but yeah, it's primarily mixed use right now, but we can add more to it.
Also, Trey, for the going back to the design information ingestion
Yeah,
into Edify, he provided more context.
awesome.
So how you know what you are estimating room areas, unit areas, component volumes. Yeah, just understanding that. I can read it
So
again.
so how you know what you're estimating, rooms, units. I mean that is some of the design information from the drawings. I mean, we're actually, you are putting that information in Edify. It's not like just pulling from the drawings, right? If the question's around like understanding it, that's just looking at the drawings, right? But then getting it in Edify is like, all right, take the conceptual drawings, for example. What is my program for the units? I have this many queens, this many kings, or if it's a different type of project, what's your program? And then use the units as like to build the program. The way we've been talking about it lately was like between units and rooms in the area sheet, you could build 70% of your estimate. The rest of it's like foundation, slab on grade. That may not be a unit, right? But you could build most of your estimate programmatically and have a lot more agility to tweak things that way than have to go line by line in an estimate. I hope that clarifies. If it doesn't, please tell me. I'm shooting in the dark a little bit.
Sorry, I'm receiving a few other things down here. The
Okay.
content is, are you able to import information from on-screen takeoff or other quantity surveying tools or Revit, etc.? How are you
Yeah.
able to
So
use numerous platforms into the tool?
yeah. So I know Mike, our CTO, has done some work with on-screen takeoff, and I've done some stuff with Bluebeam. And has had success like bringing information into Edify. A piece of it is the mapping. Like, how do you map that information from one solution to another? We are a cloud solution, so we have the ability to integrate with other cloud solutions. But if the other solutions aren't cloud, integrating with them would be a challenge. Like we would have APIs and they do not. So it'd be like, what are the mapping fields in on-screen, for example, or Bluebeam or whatever else, and things like Revit. I mean, ultimately, we showed the area sheet. In reality, at some, I mean, I don't know how far this is, and I don't want to speculate too much, but like, you have a room schedule in Revit, you have geometries in Revit, and that in theory should be able to feed Edify. I don't want to speak out of turn, but like, I think there's a lot of things down the road that we can integrate with to make it better. But some of that's me speaking to vision. And I'm not going to say approved vision because I don't speak on behalf of the whole company, but I do think those things are things that, like, we've had some of those conversations.
Thanks, Trey. Switching gears a little bit, what reports do you offer aside from variance? Are there high-level reports as well as estimate level?
Yes. So the variance report is really to compare your costs. There's two other report types. One, I mean, one's Excel and PDF, but the point is, like, we have units, we have rooms, we have the area sheet. Even inside the units or inside the rooms, there's like quantity takeoffs for those rooms, right? So like, that you can actually export either in PDF or Excel, the detailed summary, the schedule of values that is a high level summary of the detailed summary, the markups, the units, the rooms. The idea is like the detailed summary is like, that encompasses everything. Everything else you're exporting supports that, right? So it's a little, and we have some samples and stuff too we can share, but like, that's the concept. You can export everything that you're putting in Edify out of Edify. But the general rule of thumb is like, everything supports that detailed summary.
How are formulas managed and tracked?
So we I mean, they're already created in our trial environment. But that said, I mean, in part, you'd have to create the formulas. So there's a creation of those formulas, which currently may exist in Excel, again, without probably any context. But once you create them, then they're part of Edify. You have them to use in the future, and that's part of like making systems, and all that stuff comes in with formulas. So that's really how it's done. It's just you create them, and once they're created, they're available for you to use throughout the rest of your projects and estimates.
I think this next question might be related to the initial design ingestion, but I could be wrong. Am I importing quantity takeoff data from another solution? Do you support certain file type imports already? And if you support takeoff, do you support 2D and 3D takeoff?
Yeah, so we don't do takeoff in Edify. We have had conversations around how we bring that information into Edify. One of the challenges are, it's kind of everyone has their personal preference on how they do quantity takeoff. Some use I guess Bluebeam, on screen, toggle, stack. Like, pick what you like, pick what you're comfortable with. And so just pulling in one solution, it's why we're not doing quantity takeoff right now in Edify, but it would be for quantities, at least, unless we had a mapping field, like I mentioned earlier, to like try and bring those in, then it would be actually hard coding those quantities.
Oh, so a lot of our folks like Excel. Do you think the transition from Excel to Edify is intuitive?
Oh, I love that question. I also love Excel. I think it's intuitive, and at the same time, like, it's you have to like spend some time with us, kind of engage in learning it. It is because I mentioned how like things support the detailed summary. There are parts of Edify that feel more comfortable to like Excel folks, and maybe some that doesn't feel as comfortable, because it's a different way of estimating. And that's kind of the punchline, right? Like, there are parts of it that will feel it's good, right? Like area sheet, some of the grids we have in there, but it's worth noting that like there is some adjustment. But but my ask would be, especially to that question, whoever asked that question, is like, let's set up some time and actually go into Edify and show you how it works. And like, you be the judge based on first impressions, right?
Okay, on the GCs and GRs, are you able to plan for pre-con staff, or is it intended for the execution construction team? If you can plan pre-con staff, is there an overview to give insights into pre-con workload capacity?
So you can put any staff into the schedule. So you can plan for pre-con staff. As far as workload capacity, I don't believe there's currently a way to see, and I'm thinking more like Bridget Bench. I've used that in the past, where it like shows all kind of the overlapping, like where everyone's at and what their capacity is if they're on one or two projects. So I don't know of a way to see that kind of in a summary view. Now, Mike may actually have an answer to that that's different. Um, I also know, I mean, getting information out though, like again, because we're cloud, there could be a way to get it out and report on that. But I would have to, I'd have to get more information there. So I think that's worth us coming back to it.
Awesome. All right, let's do one more. Trying to see. Trying to look for a fun one. Okay, how do we check formulas for accuracy for the younger estimators? Any way to proof their work on this?
So, I mean, just getting to the formula editor, you click on the potion icon. Is there a way for, is there a way, like some of that's context for like some of the younger estimators, like if I'm more experienced, I would need to see the formula so I can check it. You would just click into the formula, like click into that formula using that potion icon and check it. It's not like necessarily throwing any like visible errors. Unless it's kind of like an XREF in Excel. I think there is something that says like, if something's not pulling from somewhere, it'll tell you. But in general, some of that's going to be based on, I mean, I would set the formulas up initially how you want them to be, and then certainly use those as a baseline for more junior estimators. And then, as you get more information, like those guys come on board, do their own estimates, they would use those formulas. And if they don't, and the costs are way off, or the quantities are like whatever's way off, you should be able to clearly see those things.
Awesome. All right, I know there are a few more questions left, but we are coming up on time. So thank you all for submitting. I'm gonna pass it to Trey for final words. Also, thank you for fielding the questions.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Yeah, we appreciate you all kind of taking time with us. My ask would be, reach out to me, and just let's set up some additional conversations, because I do think the questions are good with the group, but we want to find time to meet with you all, and kind of talk through what your pre-construction process is, and kind of show you Edify like more in more of a product view versus slides, and get your feedback, answer your questions, and see where we have alignment. But I fully believe that we can, we can partner with, and we want to partner with you all, and help you all solve these real challenges in the industry. And I believe we're the company to do that. So I'll leave it at that. And I sincerely hope that you all reach out and we can get some time set up to kind of go through the product.
Awesome. I put your email in the chat, so I opened the floodgates. Have fun with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All
All
right,
right.
thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.